What do you find most compelling about about climate change?
I find most compelling about climate change, I've got grandchildren, and they're going to have grandchildren, and there's only one Earth, and I'm convinced that the CEOs of all the big energy companies have children and grandchildren, and we're all in this together, whether we like it or not, and I think if enough of us stand up and show that we're concerned, that's what moves the people at the top.
Okay. Do you take inspiration from the march that happened in New York, which has, in rumor today, had between 100 and or 200,000 people?
Absolutely. I heard that on the radio this morning, and it was so encouraging.
Okay. And if you had a message for Edmontonians about climate change, what would it be?
Do every little thing you can personally to help. Turn off those lights, ride a bike if you can instead of driving, but raise your voices.
Raise your voices? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Had it be. Repeat after me. There's Lord had it be. Repeat after me. There's Lord had it be. Repeat after me. There's Lord had it be.
Can I ask you what your sign says and what brings you here today?
It says, for my 6 children, for my 7 grandchildren, for all grandchildren everywhere, divest from fossil fuels now. And I do have 7 grandchildren, and I'm here for all of our grandchildren, because if we do not change what we're doing, including divesting from fossil fuels, there is no future for our children. The planet will survive, we will not survive. Climate change and global warming is happening far faster than any of us predicted, and we have to act now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What does your sign say, and what does it mean to you?
It says, Tibet is the Earth's 3rd pole. Save Tibet, save the glaciers, save the Earth. Tibet is the source of most of the world's glaciers. A bunch of the world's water, fresh water, comes from there. China is tapping it, trying to put super dams in, trying to put mega power stations in, and that's going to transform the environment for half the world's population. So if we don't save Tibet's glaciers, we destroy half the Earth's population. The most vulnerable people in Bangladesh, in India, in Thailand, in Vietnam, the rice basket of the world.
Okay, and what do you think our responsibilities as Edmontonians are for fighting climate change?
We have an immense responsibility. I'm actually not from Edmonton, I'm from Red Deer, and I came to march today because I believe in it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Climate change! Action now! Climate change!
So, I see you're walking with 4 children with handmade t-shirts.
Yes.
What brings you here today, and what does t-shirts represent for you?
Them, it represents their future, and we just thought we needed to should bring some more numbers to the march, because there's 6 of us in our family, and it's about our future generations. So it was sort of last minute. The t-shirts were our last minute.
So what concerns you most with climate change right now?
Just extreme weather, food production, and basically the state of the planet, like whether or not my kids are going to be able to survive and what they're going to do to the economy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So tell me what your sign says and what brings you here today.
It says, change yourself and not the planet.
And what does that mean to you?
It means that the biggest question most people ask when you talk about climate change is how are we going to do it? What's going to make people actually stop living the way they live? We're consuming too much. And we have to change ourselves in order to reduce our consumption. If we did that tomorrow, we could substantially reduce the amount of fossil fuel that we actually need.
And what kind of change would you like to see happen?
Even as simply as switching the lights off when you leave the room, turning your thermostat down a couple of degrees, driving, carpooling if you can, trying to restrict use of your car. There's all things that we can do that are actually quite simple, that most people don't really want to do.
And what concerns you most about climate change?
Well, it's our future. What people don't realize is that should it get massive, we're all in trouble. It doesn't matter how rich you are or how cocooned you are. If the food supply goes down, everyone's going to be hungry. We've got about, I think, several weeks of supply is all.
No, we can't get on the street. They're already on the street.
For this population, there's only a couple of weeks supply of food, and if the food supply goes down, if people don't know how to grow their own food, if they're not supporting sustainable local production that is resilient in the face of climate change, we're all going to go hungry very quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. So what does your sign say and what brings you here today?
My concerns for climate change and the environment bring me here today. My sign says, clean your plate for climate's sake, veg up. The animal agriculture industry is responsible for a really large proportion of greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not one that's focused on very much, and I'd just like to be representing that today.
Okay. So you support a vegetarian or a vegan diet because it takes less pressure on the planet?
It leads to a reduction in animal products that cause that kind of pressure, especially climate change.
Okay, thank you.
Clean energy right now! Clean energy right now! Climate justice right now! Climate justice right now! Clean energy right now! Clean energy right now! No more heavy reavers!
I'm here just to show my support for the popular movement for climate to be changed, for climate change to be addressed. In Alberta here, those who are in a position to make decisions are essentially avoiding their responsibilities and seem to have completely, their allegiance is completely directed towards the oil industry. And so part of my message on the ball here is to end the subsidization of petrol poison. And it really pisses me off that a mature industry like the petrochemical industry is still being actively subsidized to the tune of billions of dollars every year and given essentially carte blanche, given preferential access to legislation, to interpretation and enforcement of regulations, as if it's there by some divine right or whatever. And I see the role of government as balancing competing interests, and not necessarily saying, okay, we're not going to have any petroleum industry, and yet they seem to have completely abdicated the responsibility to the public and are acting as if the petroleum industry is like the prime mover, the main component of manifest destiny, all that kind of stuff, and that pisses me off. But then as an alternative, I believe in always just keeping my eye on what I don't want ball long enough to reformulate what it is that we do want. And there's signs all over the place that forms of green energy are viable, becoming increasingly more solar panels have never been as cheap as they are now. And if we made no other change but to end the subsidies towards the petroleum industry and redirect those towards green energy, and did nothing else, made no other changes to the regulatory regime or anything else, I think that would achieve the tipping point. That would no longer, green energy would no longer be at a comparative disadvantage, and then the market forces that these guys are all so eager to trot out and claim that their conservatives that their policies are aligned with the free market, blah, 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 then those free market forces would actually have a chance to come up with meaningful and powerful solutions. Whereas in reality, I just see them as just in a mode of what I call crony capitalism. It's not true free market economics. Industries had to pay the total cost from cradle to grave without getting artificial subsidies, both direct and indirect. They get exemptions, like risk and costs are externalized into the public. They disappear off their bottom line. That contributes towards their profitability. Well, that's bullshit. They should pay what it costs. If they still make a profit, good. And if they don't, then the price of whatever they're making should go up so that they can pay the total cost and not get some kind of a massive public subsidization on so many levels. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you very much.
The march, it just means that we need a lot of public support for social responsibility, for the leaders to start acting responsibly with regards to the climate change. And fracking, of course, is just one small part of it. Getting away from the oil lobby and the power of the oil lobby, and instead let the power rest with everyday citizens.
Okay, and do you think that fracking and relying on natural gas is an adequate solution to climate change?
No. I mean, there's all kinds of alternative energy out there, green energy, and it can be developed, and it would create jobs, and it would be much cleaner for the planet. It's there.
So maybe if you just introduce yourself and tell me why you're here today.
I'm Martin Tweedale. I'm with the Council of Canadians, our local chapter, and we have a long history of supporting movements that save the environment and work against the exorbitant use of fossil fuels that's ruining the climate.
And what do you think about Stephen Harper not showing up to the UN Climate Summit on Tuesday?
Not surprising. I don't think it's of any great importance, but just he's signaling his base that he's not in on this.
And what do you think the biggest challenges of climate change? Like what personally sort of touches you that bring you out here today?
What personally touches me? Well, things that personally touch me are the destruction of wildlife habitats, the droughts in the southwest of the United States, and I must say this is probably the worst of all. I mean, the rise in sea levels, which are going to force millions of people out of their homes, especially in countries like Bangladesh, where we're just dealing with the poorest of the poor. And they're the victims of this horrible catastrophe.
And what do you think Canada's responsibility should be for rectifying any social injustice with climate change?
Well, yes, Canada is a rich country. I think they have to do what they can to help these people mitigate the effects which are coming up. But above all, I mean, Canada has got to start setting an example of a country that begins to close down its whole fossil fuel business, extraction of fossil fuels. I mean, it's not just the emissions that come from the tar sands or fracking, etc. It's digging this stuff out of the ground and sending it off somewhere where it's going to be turned into fuels that will put more carbon dioxide or methane into the atmosphere and only increase the chances of a terrible catastrophe later this century.
And if there's a message you wanted to give to Edmontonians, what would it be?
Yeah. Get out of the state of denial. Realize what this fossil fuel business is doing to the world and face up to it. I mean, I think people like Gary Lampier in the Journal, for example, will do anything to avoid talking about the problem. DiCaprio's a hypocrite, all this sort of stuff. Never gets down to the real issue of, look, the use of fossil fuels is making the planet pretty much uninhabitable for most people. We got to face up to that. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. I was wondering if I could ask you what your sign says and why you're here today.
Actually, I don't know for one of the signs. I'm not even legal to vote.
No, you know. Okay. Well,
No. I
Okay.
had my Canadian permanent. No.
okay, so that's better then. If you're not legal to vote, but you're participating in the march today, so what is that? Why brings you here today? What would you like to have done?
Well, like more awareness. That's the whole point. So we need to watch out for our planet. So I've always been really involved with anything that has to do with environmentally friendly policies. So that's why we're here today with my friends on my day off.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
My name is Shivaji.
Okay, and what brings you here today?
The sun, photosynthesis, and human beings.
Okay, and how are those connected?
Well, I guess the definition of selfhood that we have is intrinsic within each of those things, and each of those things is intrinsic into the definition of selfhood, reaching out to everything.
Okay, so you're here in the spirit of the interconnectedness of all beings and the planetary system?
There you go, I like it.
Okay.
Well put.
And if you had a message for Edmontonians about climate change, what would it be?
Prepare yourselves for a fucking interesting future.
Okay. Do you think that'll be a good future or a bad future?
It's up to us. It's up to us. It
Okay.
will be interesting.
Thank you very much.